Well, good morning and welcome to the first of 4 virtual workshops hosted by the Maricopa County Elections Department. We thank you for being here this morning, and we are thrilled that so many of you want to know more about elections and how to get involved. My name is Betty Galanter, and I am the Voter Outreach Manager for the Elections Department. But before we begin, I'd like to share our agenda with you. We have 30 minutes of content, which will allow for 15 minutes of Q&A. And today we have 2 presenters, Scott Jarrett and Lisa Spooner, who will share how you can get involved and successfully participate in Maricopa County's upcoming primary and general elections as an election or poll worker. Now, first up will be Scott Jarrett, who will share how you can get involved and explain the various election positions we have available. Scott is one of the co-elections directors for the Elections Department, and he's responsible for all in-person voting and tabulation operations. And he's been with the Elections Department nearly 3 years now, and he is a wealth of knowledge, directing our department operations and implementing strategic direction. And he works closely with the county recorder and reports to the County Board of Supervisors. Then we're going to break for a short Q&A session, and then we'll move on to Lisa Spooner, who will continue with our presentation and talk about training, what's involved, what's the schedule, and the tools and equipment that is provided to each poll worker. Now, Lisa joined the Elections Department prior to the 2020 presidential preference election, and as our training manager, she has led the way in training thousands of election workers, including spearheading an all-new premium poll worker training program that you're going to hear more about. Last, we will end with another Q&A session. And a few things to remember throughout this virtual workshop. We are recording this, and all of our future virtual workshops will be recorded so that we can upload the videos to YouTube for future viewing. And to help us with our presentation today, we ask that you please keep your cameras off, keep your mics on mute, and you can enter your questions anytime by simply selecting the Q&A function, type in your question, and then click submit. So with that, let's get started, and I will turn it over to Scott. Scott?
Thank you, Betty, for that nice introduction. Before we get into the nuts and bolts of recruiting and training, we're just demonstrating some key or some important election dates related to the August primary. On June 18th, we will be sending our ballots to our military and overseas voters. July 5th. So typically the voter registration deadline is 29 days before the election. That falls on July 4th. But statute then says if it falls onto a holiday, it moves to the next day. So it will be July 5th this year. And this is actually very similar with our November general election. The voter registration deadline falls on Columbus Day in October, so it does move to that next day. We will be mailing out ballots on July 6th to all our active early voting list recipients, and then opening up some of our voting locations, our vote centers and drop boxes. The last day to request a ballot is 11 days before the election, so that will fall on July 22nd. And the last day to mail back, or the recommended day to mail back your ballot and drop it off in a blue post office box or returning it to the post office, is July 26th. However, if you are an early ballot recipient, you can bring that and deliver it directly to us at any one of our voting locations that will be open all the way through 7 p.m. on election day, which will be August 2nd for the upcoming August primary. So Betty, if we can go to the next slide. So before we get started, I do want to extend a thank you to all of you that are attending and wanting to learn more about our election processes. The mission of the Elections Department is to provide accessible, reliable, secure, transparent, and efficient voting operations. And these virtual webinars are a way that we're able to shed some light and provide transparency on how we're going to achieve that mission. And your attendance here is an incredible value to us, and we appreciate your time. And then I also want to extend a thank you to any of our poll workers or temporary workers that have supported past elections, or any that are still considering to come work for us again in the 2022 cycle. Maricopa County is the second largest voting jurisdiction in the country with almost 2.6 million registered voters. We're also larger than 7 states. We allow voters based on federal and state laws to either choose to participate in the election through the mail, to take an early ballot and drop it off at any one of our voting locations, to vote in person, whether that's early or on election day. We also serve voters that may be in nursing homes and we need to send out special election boards. Mentioned our military and overseas voters that we send out ballots to 45 days before the election. So in order to be able to administer that election, we really need a very large temporary workforce. Many of our poll workers, they are the face of the elections department. If you are an in-person voter and in the November 2020 general election, even though 92% of our voters voted in early ballot, over 51% of those visited one of our voting locations. So they interacted, and a lot of the experiences that those voters took away from them was how there's this customer service that our poll workers provided to those voters. But as my co-elections director likes to say, we also have a large workforce that is working here out of the elections department. We call those our central boards, as well as our temporary workers. And he describes them as the heart of the elections department. And we would definitely not be able to set up all of our voting locations, process the millions of ballots without those central boards assisting us. So Betty, can we go to the next slide? So here are some of the numbers that we will be looking to hire for the upcoming August primary and general election. We will be looking for 2,600 poll workers. So those are our inspectors, our judges, marshals, clerks, and troubleshooters. These are terms that are set in statute. Essentially, the inspector serves as the supervisor of the voting location. The judges serve as the backup inspectors. The marshals will go and they make sure that our voting locations are secure. They do rounds to make sure that no one's violating the 75-foot limit outside of a voting location. And then our clerks perform various different roles within the location. And our troubleshooters, because when we have our voting locations open, our poll workers cannot leave. So they really need to stay on site for that entire period. We hire troubleshooters that can run errands if they run out of supplies, those types of things. They can go and retrieve those for our poll workers. So we are hiring 2,600 poll workers. Those will support our 210 to 225 voting locations that we'll offer for the August primary and November general election. That will be about 10 to 11 on average poll workers per site. So we will have 1 inspector, 2 judges, a marshal, and the rest of the board will be made up of those clerks. And then we're also going to be hiring those 750 other temporary election workers. Those will be folks that assist with signature verification, whether they're processing early ballots, that's separating that ballot from the early ballot affidavit envelope. They may be assisting in our tabulation center with adjudication or even helping with tabulating some of our ballots. We hire lots of drivers to assist with delivering all of our voting equipment out to our voting locations. And then we have couriers that we hire that will go through that early voting period and retrieve those early ballot affidavit envelopes that are at every one of our voting locations. So it really does take a very large workforce. So for these upcoming elections, we're projecting just over 3,300 temporary workers will help us serve Maricopa County voters. So we are, just with any election, we do experience some hiring and training challenges, and we'll talk through that. Lisa will talk through some of those. But for this specific election, really one of the obstacles we're encountering is just inflationary pressures. I don't know if you've been through a local fast food restaurant or the drive-through, you see that they're hiring, they're usually paying somewhere between maybe $15 to $20 an hour. So we've recognized those challenges here at the elections department. We've applied for some federal grant funds so we can provide an incentive pay for some of our poll workers, as well as increasing the pay rates for some of those central boards that will work here at the elections department. So that's exciting. And we will be able to offer slightly higher salaries for the upcoming election. Other challenges that we face is just we do require our temporary workers, some of those positions, to work several months for us. And being flexible to be able to allow those workers to come support the elections department for that longer period of time. Also recognizing that we have a lot of our community members that want to support the elections department, but can't take those extended periods off. So we do offer a wide variety of different positions. Many of our vote centers will be open 1 or 2 days. So if you can only work and provide a couple days of work for the elections department, in addition to attending a computer-based training and an in-person training session, those might be good options for you. If you are able to maybe take a week of vacation and come work at one of our vote centers that are open about 12 days, that would be great as well. Or if you can provide us 3-4 weeks of service, or maybe even a couple months, we will be hiring some of our special election boards, some of those clerks that serve those military and overseas voters in early June. Also, we have very complex and technical processes, right? Many of those are established through state statute or through federal laws. And so we hire a fantastic training team. Meet Lisa Spooner, our training manager, later in the session, to really give our temporary poll workers the tools and knowledge that they need to be successful. And some of those will be through a computer-based training program, as well as in person. Then we'll really be highlighting what we've been providing for the last 18 months, which is our premium-based poll worker training. And then also just the politicized environment can create challenges for us as we move through this election cycle. We really value to have a Republican, Democrat, independent, party not declared, libertarian, all working very closely together in our voting locations. It's something that we take great pride in. And it's part of what really ensures that we have those checks and balances through that process. However, just given this cycle, it could be challenging to be able to hire those types of poll workers, be able to reach all and make sure that we have that balanced bipartisan representation in really every action that we're doing. So those are some of the challenges that we're facing. Betty, can we go to the next slide? So here, and I'm going to we've created a brand new portal for anyone who's wanting to work in the elections department and support the upcoming elections on our website. And I'm going to go ahead and show this. I believe you can see this, Betty. Can you confirm if you can see that okay?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you. All right, so this is our website, and you can get there by typing in getinvolved@maricopa.vote. And on this new website or web portal, we provide lots of great information, all the different positions that we will be hiring for the upcoming 2022 election cycle. And whether it's the poll worker positions, and I mentioned inspector, it's a team lead or serves as a supervisor. And then we have every individual position and just short little brief descriptions, more information about the job, some of the pay rates, and then how you can submit. If you're interested, it'll take you to a form that you would complete, and that notifies us that you would like to come work in the upcoming election. We also have, if you're interested in working in our early voting division or in our tabulation section, very similar to the poll workers, but we provide a little bit more detail about the different job duties of each position. So this would be that UOCAVA clerk, or the clerk that oversees or assists with serving our military and overseas voters. We have special election boards. These would be individuals that may go out to nursing homes and serve voters that may need assistance in completing their early ballot affidavit and their early ballot. We also have our warehouse team members that will be assisting. So lots of great information. You're able to just click on each different position. It provides information related to the job duties, the different working conditions that you can expect for each of those positions. So we have positions from our poll workers that will be out at our vote centers, the early voting and tabulation center, our warehouse team, within the call center. And then we also, if you want to join us permanently, we do have some open positions as well. And you can go search for those jobs as well. So I'm going to go ahead and go back to the presentation. So I'm going to stop sharing. Betty, if you can pull up the slide deck. Great. So we do have some hiring qualifications that you must meet in order to work for us. You do have to be registered to vote in Maricopa County. And one of the reasons is, and I mentioned this earlier, is we need this bipartisan representation in every stage of this process. So this is one of the ways we confirm that we have Republicans, Democrats, Libertarians, Independents, Party Not Declared, all part of this process. It's by confirming that you are registered to vote and you're registered to vote within Maricopa County. This is a statutory provision, so state law does require it. With an exclusion, right? We can offer, if you are 16 or older, so you can't register to vote, or at least then participate in the election until you're 18. If you are a US citizen and a current high schooler and over the age of 16, and we'll talk about this in a future slide a little bit more, you can come and work with us as a clerk and be one of our student poll workers. Another restriction or qualification is you can't be a candidate on the ballot unless you are, the state statute does provide exclusion here. If you are a precinct committeeman and you're on the ballot, you can still work as a poll worker or one of our central boards. So there's also other statutory hiring requirements that we have to achieve. And again, this is really driving home the point that we really need that bipartisan representation in every action that we're doing and performing to serve Maricopa County voters. It does require that we have an equal number of inspectors from the two largest political parties in every one of our voting locations. So we only have one inspector per location. So if we have 220 locations open and we hire 80 Republicans, we need to try to hire exactly 80 Democrats, and then the rest could be filled with Libertarians or independent voters to serve in that inspector role. There's also requirements that if we do hire an inspector from one of the two largest parties, so if our inspector is a Republican, we have to hire then the marshal to be a Democrat or vice versa. And then there's also some same requirements for if our two judges, we hire one of our judges to be a Democrat, then that other judge needs to be an inspector. If we do hire an independent, then both those judges can be an independent or can be a libertarian. We do have other hiring requirements such as technical qualifications, especially since we have a lot of technology in our voting locations. Some of our higher paying positions, maybe our T-Techs, would be looking for them to have some technical experience or some prior qualifications to assist with troubleshooting any equipment issues we may have in the field. Also, we do hire drivers, and our drivers, they are 26-foot box trucks, so we would like prior experience working as a driver to come assist with us delivering those all of that equipment safely and securely out to our voting locations. We do pay, so that's one of the misnomers out there, that we have volunteers. There are volunteers involved in the process. Those would be political party observers. Those are appointees directly from the political parties themselves, the county chairs. But everyone that's actually working to support the elections, our elections for us, we do pay those folks, and it will be starting anywhere from $12.80 an hour up to $20 an hour. So if we can go to the next slide, Betty. So I mentioned previously that we do have a student election program. So this is not new to Maricopa County. We did offer it previously. We didn't offer it during 2020 due to the COVID-19 pandemic. So we are reintroducing it with a little bit revamped version of it. And this is really just our partnership with high schools across the entire county, really working with teachers and students to try to bring in some interested high schoolers that are over the age of 16 that may want to serve and help serve democracy and the Maricopa County voters. I did mention previously, but they do need to be a US citizen, be in high school over the age of 16, and they do need to receive permission, and they'll have to sign a form from a parent authorizing them, as well as the school authorizing them to come work in the election. They will need to work the entire election day, so that would be starting their day at 5:30 a.m., ending it at 7 p.m., or helping with the closing procedures, so it could be as late as 8 or a little bit after that, and then be able to attend some training prior to election day as well. So it's a lot of great opportunities for some of our younger potential future voters. And it really serves us very well, because then we can bring these new people into the process. Hopefully we can get years and years and years of experience and help with them serving Maricopa County voters in the years to come. So we can go to the next slide. So there's lots of different ways for you to get involved. Like I and my fellow co-director, Mr. Ray Valenzuela, will really be thrilled if you decide to come work for us and serve one of those over 3,300 different temporary positions. However, if you just want to get more information about election processes, there's lots of and inaccurate information out there circulating related to elections. If you just want to come to our justthefacts.vote website, we have a lot of information that is debunking several of the myths out there. And it also gives you the opportunity to sign up for our monthly newsletter related to Just the Facts. And that is designed to really inform the public and voters and providing more transparency of our processes. We've currently issued 2 of these newsletters. The first one was describing that we don't just offer elections during the August primary, November general election. We offer usually 4 elections every year. So this year, we're right in the middle of our May jurisdictional election. We're serving the voters for Litchfield Park. So the August primary will actually be our 3rd election that we've administered this year. And then our second newsletter really highlighted the facts of mail-in voting. A lot of people don't know that we've been a no excuse absentee voting state since 1990. Called it the permanent early voting list. Now we call it the active early voting list. Voters can also go to our website at request.maricopa.vote and sign up to get a one-time request as well. And you don't need any excuse to be able to request those early ballots. We have some other links and information here on this slide as well. Whether you want to be part of that student election clerk program, you can send an email to our recruitment@risk.maricopa.gov. We've talked through the get involved at maricopa.vote. Great website, lots of information of the different positions we'll be recruiting for. And then if you just have general questions, you can send those to voterinfo@risk.maricopa.vote, or always give us a call at 602-506-1511. We have a fantastic, call it our STAR call center, and they can answer your questions, or at least get you in touch with the right person that can answer your questions. So that's the last slide that I had. I think, do we have any questions, Betty, for me to answer?
Yeah, so we have some questions. The first one is, the website states poll workers must be 18 years or older. What positions are open to minors?
Yeah, so those student poll workers, they can serve as a clerk position. They can't serve as, and some of that is the statutory requirements for making sure that we have that bipartisan representation amongst the inspectors, the marshals, and the judges. So that does open the opportunity for them to serve as a clerk. And there's lots of different positions for them to be able to serve. It is a very long day. So we really welcome those younger poll workers or potential poll workers to come and support some of our more tenured or experienced poll workers.
Thank you. And another question comes from Lori. Does working for elections preclude a worker from making monetary contributions to candidates that may be on the ballot?
No, it does not. So if you are one of our poll workers, you can still contribute to a political action campaign or a candidate that's on the ballot.
And from
Now,
Julie,
what you can't do is wear any, so any of the clothes that you wear and you come work for us, you can't be wearing something that favors a political candidate or any contests that are on the ballot.
okay, thank you, Scott. And then Susan asked, can an appointed observer also be a paid poll worker?
So if there are many different observer opportunities, then you'd have to go through and get appointed through the county political party chair. So if you are an observer during early voting, say, and then you want to come work for us for election day or the 2 days, that would be okay. However, if you were assigned a position that was 4 weeks, then it might not be available for you to serve both capacities, because we would need you to work that entire 4-week period of time. So it just really depends on your schedule and the position that you're hired into.
Okay. Well, we do have more questions to answer, but we'd like to move on. We will answer them later. We would like to move on to Lisa Spooner, who will talk to you more about training. Lisa?
Thank you, Betty. Welcome once again, and thank you for your interest in this information and attending this webinar. We do hope you'll join us in working elections this year. I'd like to tell you a little bit about our poll worker training, starting with premium. Next slide, Betty. We rolled out a new 2-day premium poll worker course last summer, and I'm pleased to say that almost 400 poll workers are premium certified to date and will be so for 48 months. We've been focused on getting the site leaders certified first. So Scott spoke about inspectors and judges, so those would be site leaders. So there should be 1 or 2 premium certified poll workers at each location for the August and November elections this year. Since we've been working with site leaders, this slide represents the goal for the course when they're taking premium. So they'll be able to lead a team of poll workers to effectively manage a voting location with the highest standards of service to voters and security and operations. Next slide, Betty. So I thought it would be useful to look at our premium day 1 and day 2 agendas, just to give you a flavor of what the course is like. And this course is for folks who have been poll workers. And like I said, especially focusing on inspectors and judges at this time. So we do have a premium training manual for this course that does include information about all types of elections. So we start off with the election basics and describing poll worker boards and pre-election activities to kind of warm up. And then we also show on the first day several short videos of leadership in elections, talking about their areas, welcoming the poll workers, and then talking about what happens in their areas. So for example, early voting, signature verification, and ballot processing, or it might be ballot tabulation and how they handle misread and damaged ballots. So a lot of really good information is shared in those short videos. Of course, we also discuss many of the federal and state election laws throughout the course. And we show equipment videos and spend time demonstrating the equipment in the afternoon. The poll workers are always asking for more time on the equipment, and I think that's fantastic. Let's go to the next slide. So on day 2, I will tell you some favorite topics on this second day of training do include exercises on voter ID, conflict resolution, and de-escalation. For conflict resolution and de-escalation, attendees pair up to discuss scenarios that we provide on cards that are typically things that have happened at voting locations in the past or could happen in the future. And so they discuss how they would respond to those situations. Then they share back to the class And then we talk about some additional ways they could address those situations. In the afternoon, poll workers demonstrate their equipment skills to the instructors so that the instructors can assess their skills on the equipment. Practice quizzes are taken throughout the course in preparation for an exam that's taken online within 2 weeks of completing the course. Poll workers are also given an opportunity to assess their own knowledge and comfort level working in different roles as a poll worker. Feedback from attendees has been extremely positive about this course. Some of them have said it's the best election training they've ever attended. And we'll continue to deliver premium poll worker training in 2023. So for each election, we actually create lots of different training materials. We create a manual, online training, and in-person training. The poll worker training manual contains all the information needed to run a successful election at a voting location. For larger elections, the manual is around 170 pages and progresses chronologically through general information, pre-election information, setup, opening, the daily operation, working with the voters, checking them in, updating registration, the voting process. And of course, we have to talk about closing, a couple different types of closing, nightly closing for those early vote centers and election night closing when things need to be packed up. There are checklists throughout the manual as well to help poll workers keep track of the tasks that they're completing. The manual is also color-coded, as you can see, to find the sections quickly and has a table of contents at the beginning. So what you're seeing on the screen here represents the different sections of the manual. There are page references throughout the manual so that poll workers can find information quickly. And a comprehensive index at the back of the manual also helps them find information in there for reference. We also post a PDF of the manual on our training webpage. As Scott said, we have a jurisdictional election in Litchfield Park next Tuesday. So that's the manual that's currently posted online and the front cover that you see on this slide. So online training is a perfect prerequisite for in-person training. Online training is very informational. It is approximately 90 minutes and it includes topics such as the current election information and the agenda you see here. So we talk comprehensively about the voting process and equipment, all the poll worker roles, safety and security at the voting location, key election laws that poll workers need to be aware of, proof of identity, provisional voting and how that works, and of course, providing excellent customer service to our voters. There's also audio with closed captioning throughout our online course. And the online training also concludes with a quiz at the end that does need to be passed at 80%. Now, our next slide is a bit of an eye chart, but you'll probably recognize that this is a big part of Maricopa County here. And the stars represent different voting locations. So this will show you the concentration of voting locations. And so the reason I wanted to show this is because of our access for poll worker training. So you probably noticed that there are some purple labels in there, not necessarily the purple stars, but the labels in here are where we will be conducting training in different parts of the valley for the August primary election. We've scheduled training to happen centrally at Burton Bar Library, in the East Valley at Chandler Gilbert Community College, in the West Valley at Pendergast Community Center, in the North Valley at Paradise Valley Community College, And we're also offering a handful of classes at Salt River Pima Community Center. We're going to be offering morning, afternoon, evening, and Saturday classes to accommodate all the poll workers that would like to work the August primary. As per statute, we'll begin our in-person training within 45 days of Election Day and run classes through the Friday preceding Election Day. Sessions are going to be around 3 hours in length for that in-person training. Can I have the next slide, Betty? Thank you. Poll worker training in person. This is us training at Pendergast Community Center before the November 2021 jurisdictional election. This is one of the locations we'll use for training for the August primary. Pendergast is a very, very nice training location, as you can see here. The equipment is also here at this location. It's just behind the person taking the picture and to the left and right. In-person training is focused on setup, opening, giving voters their voting materials, the 75-foot limit, electioneering, observers, using and troubleshooting the equipment, and closing activities. We do create equipment videos for use in the training, which are available online for poll workers to revisit for just-in-time training. We also create equipment job aids as a quick reference for poll workers to use at voting locations. As you can see, we try to appeal to different learning styles in our training with opportunities to read, listen, watch, and do. And this is my last slide. Obviously, we like to highlight our equipment, and we do put a lot of effort into training on the equipment. What you see on this slide, starting at the left, are the ballot on demand printers. This is just one type, but we do train on these printers that can produce any ballot style for a voter once they check in on the site book. So we do train on our site book check-in stations, which are amazing because they guide the voter through the process and the poll workers through their process. Of course, we train on an accessible voting device because every location is required to have one. So for voters who are blind or need larger print or want to use a touch screen instead of marking a ballot by hand, this allows them to mark a ballot very easy. And then we, of course, train on our tabulators, which are used on election day. And then the envelope drop box also appears here because there's a lot of security measures we have in place to make sure those affidavit envelopes are secured at all times. Thank you so much. Let's see if we have any questions.
Thank you so much, Lisa. And yes, we do have some questions. So let me go ahead and take a look at some of those. And go to Lisa. Lisa asked a question. How will voting locations be secured after the events that took place after the 2020 presidential election at the Maricopa County Tabulation and Election Center? So Lisa, we work closely with the County Sheriff's Office and local and national law enforcement agencies to ensure security at the polls. And we also train our inspectors in de-escalation techniques. Another question from Alan. FYI, I have a ton of experience with hybrid training solutions if you want to pass my name on to someone. So thank you so much. And what you can do there, Alan, is email sprice@risc.maricopa.gov with your resume. And we appreciate that question so much. Thank you. Another question is, what's the Get Involved website? Well, that is the GET, Get, INVOLVED, Get Involved.maricopa.vote. Another question from Julie, will I be able to work just the general election? I will be out of town for the primaries. And well, Julie, you will be able to work for the general election. You'll be required to attend the in-person and online training that is assigned to you at the time of hire by your recruiter.
Well, Betty, can I add a little bit? So
Of
we
course.
prefer that any of our temporary workers work both, just because once they work the August primary, they get more experienced. And the November general election is just a much more large scale election. However, there will be opportunities for anyone that wants to work just the general election to come out and work for us. So don't, just because you can't work for August, don't assume that you can't work for the November general election.
Thank you, Scott. A question from Kimberly. This presentation will be available later. You wanted to know if you would be able to provide the information to your grandson because he can't be here and he's in school. So yes, we are going to go ahead and make the presentation available at a later time via YouTube. Another question from an anonymous attendee. Can high school students get volunteer hours for participating? Also, are they just volunteering or are they getting paid? Great question. The student would be in a paid position. Therefore, they would not qualify for the volunteer hours. But it is also a great way for students to become involved in the civic process. And all of that experience looks really good on a resume for college and for future employers. From Sally, I heard something about Arizona legislators restricting absentee voting. Is that in the works? Well, hi, Sally. Early voting laws have remained the same with the exception of the permanent early voting list changing to the active early voting list. So if you are on the what we call PEVL, we'll still send you a ballot in the mail for the 2022 primary election. The law change requires that active early voting, or AEVL, voters participate by mail in at least one election with a candidate on the ballot from now until 2024. And you can learn more in our recent Election Connection series, video series, which is also available on YouTube.
Betty, can I also add?
Of course.
Oh, and as that new Election Connection video webinar where Mr. Valenzuela and I answered your questions, there is a caveat for active early voters for the August primary. If you are an independent voter, you need to actually pick a ballot and you will need to tell us which ballot style you would want for us to then send that ballot to you. So you do have to take action. And we just last week, we sent out our 90-day cards. Those cards had a pick the ballot option for those independent voters, but you don't have to wait. You can go to beballotready.vote. If you go to our website, it's a personalized dashboard where you can find out information about your registration status, what will be on your ballot, where your voting location is. But there's a pop-up that will then inform you that you need to select that ballot that then we can then mail to you. Thank you, Betty.
Scott. Thank you. Linda has a question. I leave for the summer. Are there jobs, especially volunteer jobs, available for me? I arrive back sometime in October. Hello, Linda. If you are interested in a volunteer position, you can reach out to your political party. Poll worker positions may be available when you return in October. However, these positions are paid versus volunteer. We have time for a couple of more questions. Let's see, we have one from Alan. I applied for a paid position the other day. I think you were referencing something in the previous slide. Is this related to that? So yes, Alan, the slide that you were referencing and that paid position, that would be related to what was being discussed at the time that you entered your question. And I think that's all the time that we have now. I know that there are more questions, but we want to be courteous of everyone's time today. This does conclude our first virtual workshop. I would like to end with an ask. And that is, your feedback is very important to us, and we'd like to hear from you and let us know how we're doing. So we will send you a follow-up email with a link to let us know how we're doing, and you can share your comments. And we ask that you kindly take a moment to just fill out and submit our online survey card. And remember, go to getinvolved.maricopa.vote and subscribe to our Just the Facts newsletter if you haven't already done so by going to justthefacts.vote. We hope that you can join us for our second virtual workshop on June 15th, where we will talk about early voting, and email invites will be sent to you approximately 3 to 4 weeks before the event date. So from all of us at Maricopa County Elections Department, thank you for attending and have a great day.